Hi, welcome to the first of my hopefully three Popsugar 2021 reading challenge videos. I've never done this type of video before, and it's only been very recently that I've mentioned even taking part in the Popsugar Reading challenge, and there's been no real reason for that. It just wasn't something that I thought people would be interested in. But I am on the groups on Facebook, and the 5,000 daily posts went from being about when is the challenge going to be posted with all the prompts, and it's changed into, oh my god, I don't know what I'm reading for such a prompt, or anyone got any suggestions for this prompt? So I thought actually it might be quite interesting to have a look at some of the prompts. There's some really easy ones, and there's some that are quite difficult initially and will require some research. So I just thought, how about I talk through them, give a few little suggestions. If you're interested, you are. If you're not, then I'll see you later in another video. But yeah, let's give it a go. So the first prompt is a book published in 2021, and I'm not going to suggest anything for this, because quite literally it's any book that is published next year. Just pick up any book you fancy that's published in 2021 and you're done. End of. So this next prompt number 2, is the one that immediately on looking at the challenge and doing a very quick scan through of the prompts, this one was like, oh my god, I don't even know what that is. And that is to read an Afrofuturist book. And I kind of made this logical guess that it was probably sci-fi or future dystopian, but with a black protagonist. And I guess I'm sort of correct, but there's more to it than that. So I had a look at the official definition, and let's read it together. So Google tells me that an Afrofuturism book is any futuristic or science fiction themes which incorporate elements of black history and culture. So I was kind of there. And I have had a look at some of the recommendations. I already had some on my TBR, but I wanted to have a look at whether other books that I wasn't sure of fit into that category. And it did. In fact, I'm hoping to be reading Dread Nation by Justina Ireland. This is actually, I thought this was historical. I don't know. I guess it's like a dystopian version of the world where there's zombies, and the main character, Jane, is being trained as an attendant. So she would have weapon skills and etiquette skills so that she's able to, I guess, have a job or a career where she's protecting wealthy people. However, she doesn't want that in life. She wants to head back to where her family initially came from in Kentucky, and have a completely different life. She's not interested in the politics and, society, kind of the rich people and how things are turning out there. I don't know any more than that. To be honest, all that got me was the zombies, and I'm sure you're very surprised about that. But the other one that I wanted to recommend is Binti by Nnedi Okorafor. Now, Binti is the first in a novella series, and it's very futuristic. Binti is a young girl who has got this very African background. I'm not sure if it's actually set in Africa because it's so futuristic that it's very much space kind of themed. However, she's got this very kind of African ethnicity to her and the cultures around her family. And she gets offered a place at the best university in the whole galaxy. And she's so excited, but at the same time, she's so but at the same time, she's so worried about disappointing her family because they don't want her to go there. They want her to stay at home and have the kind of life that girls are supposed to have within their culture. And Binti ends up going off to university, but on the way, the spaceship she's travelling in is attacked by another race that they have been at war with for a long time. And it's just a really, really great series. Very, very strong cultural themes running through it. But it's described so well that like you can build this really vivid picture in your mind, even though these are things that don't actually exist. So you've got like no reference points, if that makes sense. And yeah, it's a fantastic, fantastic series. Highly recommend that one. And then the third recommendation is a book that I've actually not read myself, but lots and lots of people have spoken about it. And it's Slay by Brittany Morris. Now, Slay has a a teenager female protagonist who's black called Kira. She develops this online kind of gaming community called Slay, and it's purely for black people. And then the issues come when people are protesting about Slay and about it being racist because it's only for black people. But what Kira intended was that it would be a safe space for black people where there was no racism, no discrimination, and that's literally all I know about it. I've heard amazing things about this book, and it would definitely fit the Afrofuturism prompt. Prompt number 3 is a book with a heart, a diamond, a spade, or a club on the cover. I'm not going to go through these, there's probably hundreds of thousands out there, but I will show you a selection over here somewhere, and obviously it's up to you to then also go and look for others. And then with prompt number 4, this is to read a book by an author that has got the same star sign as you. Again, it's pointless me going through all of them. I will say that there is 2 ways to go about researching this. You can either go on Google and just look for authors with XXX star sign and look for those lists, or what some people have been doing is Googling some of their favourite authors to try and find out when their birthdays are, because obviously not every author is going to appear on lists, especially when I was having a look. A lot of the lists were quite older, they'd been written or they've been compiled a few years back, and a lot of the more modern authors weren't included. Just for any fellow Librians out there, we have got great authors in our star sign. We've got people such as Nora Roberts, Philip Pullman, R.L. Stine, Roxane Gay. There's loads out there. And so, yeah, just head out and see what you can find. Now then, prompt number 5 is another one that's caused a bit of panic on the Facebook groups, and that is a book that is dark academia, and people are just like, oh my god, I don't know what this is. And I was kind of at that point, I was more or less thinking it's probably something that has some dark themes to it, and again I was sort of right. So it's just a book with dark themes, quite controversial themes as well, I would say. So the book that I'm planning on reading for that prompt is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This is a book that I was planning on reading last year and just never got around to it. This is the book that focuses on a relationship, or shall we say an inappropriate relationship between a teacher and a student. It's caused a lot of conflicting views and opinions and emotions, this book. It's very much talked about all over YouTube and everywhere else in the book community. So I'm really, really hoping that I can get to that one this year. And another recommendation for this prompt is a book that I read recently, again, very controversial, and that was A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. There were discussions around this book as to whether it was racist, and I think even if we put that aside, it's still a darkly themed book because despite it being kind of said to be like a more twisted Harry Potter, it is very much about death and destruction and the crappy sides of life and children suffering. So it definitely would fit for that prompt. And then the next one is a book that I haven't read, but it's another book that is just, or was when it first came out, everywhere. I saw it everywhere. And that's Bunny by Mona Award. This book is this book is about a group of girls at college or university, whichever one, and they are called the Bunnies. Now, our protagonist, she gets invited to be one of the bunnies. They all call each other Bunny, and she ends up being thrust into this quite sinister, scary world, and it very quickly all turns into very much a horror story. She gets involved with like ritualistic things that they're doing, and there's talks of like blurring the edges of reality. And it does sound a very intriguing book, and everybody, or I would say it feels like everybody who talks about this book says something along the lines of, what the fuck have I just read? So again, just that would perfectly fit that prompt. And prompt number 6 is a book with a gem, a mineral, or a stone in the title. Now, initially, I was very much like, this is a fantasy directed prompt, because you don't find that many horrors or sci-fi dystopian with that kind of title. However, somebody on one of the Facebook groups very helpfully explained how a star is actually classed as a mineral. I'm not too sure if this is legit, but I'm going with it because there's lots of books out there that I have on my TBR, and that ones that sound quite good that have the word star or stars in the title. So I'm okay with that. I'm going to pretend that it's all 100% good. And so I cannot ever pass up an opportunity to mention one of my all-time favourite books, which is And the Stars Were Burning Brightly by Daniel Joando. This is a YA book about a teenage boy who finds that, he finds his brother hanging. His brother's taken his own life due to bullying. And it's an absolutely incredible book. It's extremely emotional, and it's so relevant to today's life. And it's just a book that I recommend to everybody, and that would fit obviously the stars. And The one that I am thinking of reading for this prompt is Looking at the Stars, and it's how an uncurable illness. How incurable illness taught one boy everything. This is a memoir of a boy who was born with a brain tumour and water on his brain. And he was kind of predicted or given a very short expectation of life. He wasn't supposed to survive for very long, and he wasn't supposed to really accomplish anything in life or have any kind of normality. This young boy was born a fighter, basically, and he fought and fought and fought, and he had lots of medical procedures and surgeries and difficulties, and he managed to overcome so much. And I'm really, really looking forward to just reading this. I think it's going to be extremely emotional, and extremely kind of, I guess, inspiring of no matter what kind of crap is going on, we just need to fight and fight and fight as much as we can. And there have been lists developed for every prompt over on Goodreads. And the one thing I want to say, in fact, this goes for the lists or suggestions and recommendations on Facebook groups as well as these videos like this, is that if you are somebody who really, really wants to stick to the prompts, that you're very concrete in that it has to exactly be that prompt, then please do your own research, check out any recommendations and suggestions, don't just accept them, because I've seen things like, I was having a look at ideas for this prompt about the stone gem mineral thing, and the list on Goodreads has got tons and tons of books recommended that have got gold and silver and bronze and things like that in the title. Like, you know, we've got the Golden Compass. What else? There was the Goldfinch, things like that. And I don't think that gold and silver are a gem, a mineral, or a stone. So I think they would need researching better. The next prompt is that the main character has the job of your current job or of your dream job. And obviously this is again a very personalised type of prompt, so go wild. People have even been saying, oh, there's not really a job that I would love to do, so I'm going to go for something magical, like choosing a career out of Harry Potter, or just a dragon trainer or whatever. So yeah, go where you want with that one. The next prompt is a book that has won the Women's Prize for Fiction, and obviously you're very limited with this prompt. I think there's roughly around 12 books, maybe a few more, that you can choose from. I am going to be reading We Need to Talk About Kevin by Lionel Shriver. This is a book about a boy who, just before his 16th birthday, he went into school and shot a ton of students, teachers, cafeteria workers, people like that. As far as I'm aware, it focuses more on his mother rather than the actual event of the school shooting. His mother didn't really ever want to be a mum. She wasn't really like cut out to be a mum, and she has all these kind of guilty feelings that her, not bad parenting, but like her feelings about being a mum and that she wasn't very capable, probably resulted in the school shooting, and with Kevin kind of going off the rails and turning out to how he did. So I think it's more about the parents' side of things and the emotional effects it has, like especially when it's your child that has done something so horrific rather than the actual school shooting. But I've heard great things about this, and it has been on my TBR for quite some time. Can't wait to read it. Although I think it's going to be one of those ones where you've got to like be in the right mindset for it. One of the other ones, in fact, it's the only one that I've read out of all the books on the list, and that is The Power by Naomi Alderman. This is a dystopian kind of setting where girls suddenly realise that they suddenly come into this power where they can produce electricity. And it doesn't sound that bad until they start using the electricity to control other people. At first, it was a great thing because, you'd get girls who were being attacked and they would be able to fight off attackers by using their electricity in the body. And that sounds great, but then it starts like being abused, the power, and girls and women are then kind of trying to turn it into a very matriarchal world, which sounds fantastic for us women, but there's a lot of setbacks to it, and they're trying to literally turn men into kind of slaves. And it's just a great book. I gave it 5 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. Some people have really not liked it. It's just up to your taste, really. And then the other one I thought was worth a mention was Half of a Yellow Sun by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Now, I haven't read this one, but I have read a couple of other books by this author and really enjoyed them. They're not they're not light reads at all in the slightest. There's very, very like heavy topics flowing through the books. This particular one focuses on 3 different characters from 3 different, completely different walks of life who get caught up in the conflict in Nigeria. And so it promises to be a very eye-opening experience reading that book. I'm absolutely convinced it's going to be fantastic. Prompt number 9 is a book with a family tree, and I don't really know what I'm going to read for this prompt. When I had a look at the suggestions list on Goodreads, there was literally one book that I'd read, which was one of the Harry Potter books, and not a single any other books on the list that I have got tagged as want to read or anything. So I'm really not sure. I think this is going to be one that I kind of gradually discover through the year. However, I did spot that The Cousins by Karen M. McManus, which has only just recently been released, that is on the list. And at the moment, there's quite a lot of people talking about this, and there's quite a few people saying that it's really good. And so, yeah, it's a bit intriguing. I think it's a YA thriller. All I know is that there's a group of girls who are cousins. They are kind of forced into going spending the summer with their grandmother in her house, and they think it's just going to be like a summer of just hanging around and stuff like that. But it says that the grandmother has some very different plans for them, and no idea what that is, but apparently it's a thriller, so it's quite intriguing, especially based on the good reviews that people are giving it. However, there's also now this is not a book I would ever read. It's Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. If anyone's into like chick lit, I've heard people absolutely love this book. It's not my kind of thing at all, but that is on the list, so hopefully that does fit. And then I did notice that there was a lot of Hilary Mantel books on the list, and as far as I'm aware, she's very historical fiction, so that's great for those out there. I think for me, this is definitely just going to be one of those where I happen to come across it in a book that I'm already reading. Either that or it'll be the book that I'm desperately trying to fit in the last week of December of 2021. Prompt number 10 is to read a book that was a bestseller in the 90s. There are thousands of them out there. There's lots and lots of lists already been put together over the years, not just for this prompt in the Popsugar Challenge. So I'm not going to go through them all, but there's some fantastic authors that were bestsellers in the 90s. I, for one, am going to be reading one of Stephen King's books. I'm not sure yet, possibly Needful Things, but definitely going to read a Stephen King book. That's just like my excuse to fit it in there. But you've also got, Michael Crichton with Jurassic Park. Wow, he's amazing. He's done obviously other books as well that were fantastic in the 90s. Nora Roberts is another best-selling author in the 90s. Who else? Dean Koontz. He appears on loads of bestseller lists in the 90s. There's absolutely tons and tons out there. And then the next prompt is a book about forgetting. Now, I've got two books that are on my TBR about forgetting, both drastically different, and I can't decide which one to actually pop into this kind of prompt. And I think it's going to be something that I decide at the time, like which am I going to be more up for reading at that time. The first one is a fiction book which is called The Forgetting Time by Sarah Guskin, by Sharon Guskin, and this is about a little boy who seems to have been reincarnated from a previous life. He knows things that he shouldn't really know at his age, and he talks about his previous life and the fact that he wants to go back to his previous mother, and so his family are trying to deal with that, and then we've got the kind of other side of the story where we've got a man who was an incredible scientist, and he was trying to look at ways of proving what happens to us after we die, or proving what happens before we're born, like do we exist? And he suddenly hears about this young boy who appears to have been reincarnated, and he thinks like, this is the perfect evidence, this is the perfect case that I can present. However, this man is struggling with some kind of brain injury, and he's got aphasia, which is where he struggles to put words into the right sentences, to pick out the right words from his mind to say what he's trying to say. I feel like that sometimes, geez. And so it's about these two kind of people at the opposite ends of life, I guess, trying to not prove the same thing, but they've got the same kind of journey in mind of looking back at what's happened prior to this boy being born. The other book that I was considering is called Forever Today, a memoir of love and amnesia by Deborah Wearing. This is about, it's obviously non-fiction. It's about a man who gets a virus, and this virus affects his brain or damages it in such a way that when he wakes up from his coma, he experiences every one of his waking moments as if he's just woken up from that coma. So he's got like no recollection of what's happened prior to it. He's was diagnosed with one of the worst ever, most extreme cases of amnesia in the world that's known. And he literally forgets from one moment to the next. It's that bad. And Deborah was searching and searching and searching for the right kind of medical treatment for her husband. But obviously, with him being the most extreme case, there wasn't stuff out there for him. She fought and fought and eventually managed to get him into some kind of specialist unit where they could try and at least improve things a slight, tiny bit. And it's about their kind of relationship as well as the illness itself, and about like them and their love and how they kind of got through this. I've very briefly looked at the reviews for this book, and it all talks about, heartbreaking and incredible and emotional roller coaster, things like that. So like I said, this is going to be one of those where I'm like, am I really in the right mind to read this at this moment in time? But I have owned the actual physical copy of this book for at least 2 or 3 years and still not got around to it. So maybe this is just the perfect kind of nudge to pick it up. And then obviously a biggie that would definitely fit this prompt is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V. Schwab. Just come out, everybody's raving about it. I think I've only ever seen a couple of people mention that they weren't too keen. This is the girl who does a deal with the devil to live forever. However, the downside of it is that no one will ever remember her. And then, however long later, we're talking maybe hundreds of years, she meets a boy who then starts to remember her, and it's like I said, it's a YouTube darling basically. Everybody's talking about it, everybody loves it. V. Schwab is a very well-known author, so that's just the perfect book for this prompt. Prompt number 12 is a book that you've seen on somebody else's bookshelf. Now this is one of the easiest prompts to fit, because all you need to do is have a scroll through Instagram or even watch videos like this where people are proper booktubers and they film in front of beautiful bookshelves, not in a plain office. And yeah, it's easy. Just do that and find one. And then the last one I'm going to talk to you about today is the Locked Room Mystery book, which is prompt number 13. Now, the official kind of definition of a locked room mystery is literally like there's a dead body in a locked room and, you got to figure out who has been the killer. However, I think people seem to be kind of expanding it or stretching it a little to be more like one of those kind of closed environment ones. So I am probably going to read The Last by Hannah Jameson. This is where we've got a gentleman who is at a work conference in Switzerland. He's in the hotel. Whilst he's in there, nuclear bombs are dropped on several major cities across the world and the apocalypse starts to happen. And he ends up stuck with a group of people who have survived staying in this hotel. And this is months later now that the water ends up, I don't know if it like kind of turns off or they end up having problems with the running water in the hotel. And so he goes up to investigate, and he finds a young girl's body in the water tank. And this young girl was one of the people who had survived and was staying in the hotel. But over them 2 months, people had kind of gone off and committed suicide or gone off and, you know, tried to leave and look for other survivors. So they just assumed at the time when this little girl went missing that she'd gone with one of the other groups of people, and it turns out that she was actually murdered. So it had to be one of the people that was in the hotel at the time, and so this man decides to investigate this murder, and it obviously kind of covers like a closed in kind of thriller thing, because it's like a set group of people that it could have been in this set one building. But then there is other books such as, I know people are looking at One by One and The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware. Apparently both of those are kind of closed in mysteries. And on the list a lot of Agatha Christie books. Apparently, I mean, I don't read Agatha Christie, it's not my thing, but apparently a lot of her books would also cover that prompt. And so I've kept you for more than enough time today. So that is the end of today's video. Hopefully in the next video we'll look at the next 13 and give a few little suggestions about that. And thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and if you want to get notified for any of my other videos, please ring that bell and leave me a comment below if you've got any suggestions about any of these prompts, or if you can correct me on anything, then please let me know and comment below. Thank you very much. Bye.